In Monroe, Connecticut, locked away inside a glass case marked with a warning, "Positively do not open," sits one of the most infamous objects in paranormal history. A child's toy. A harmless-looking Raggedy Ann doll with red yarn hair, a painted smile and soft fabric body. But behind its stitched grin hides one of the darkest legends the world has ever known. This is not just folklore, nor a Hollywood invention. The story of Annabelle was recorded by two of the most famous paranormal investigators of all time, Ed and Lorraine Warren, and its roots trace back to the real-life torment of two young nurses in the early 1970s. The Warrens themselves called it the most malevolent object we've ever encountered. This is the true story of Annabelle. It began in 1970. A 28-year-old nurse named Donna was given a gift by her mother. She was living in a small apartment, sharing the space with her roommate, Angie. Her mother thought a doll would brighten the home, a reminder of her childhood and innocence in a world where both women were immersed daily in the exhaustion of nursing school. The doll was simple, soft, innocent. A large Raggedy Ann doll, cheerful and harmless. Donna accepted it with gratitude. She placed it on her bed, letting it serve as a token of comfort in her apartment. But almost immediately, small things began to change. The doll didn't stay where it was left. At first, Donna thought she had misplaced it, or perhaps Angie had moved it while tidying. The doll would be found sitting in a different position, leaning against a chair, slumped in the corner, or placed in the living room instead of the bedroom. The changes were subtle, almost laughable. But the unease grew quickly. Within days, Donna and Angie found the doll in entirely different rooms of the apartment. They would leave for work in the morning, only to return and find Annabelle waiting for them in the kitchen, or slumped against the couch as if it had been watching the door. Still, they told themselves it was imagination. A prank. Stress. Nothing more. But then, the notes began. Pieces of parchment paper, folded small, appeared around the apartment. Each note carried a message written in a child's handwriting. "Help me. Help us. Save Lou." There was one problem. Neither Donna nor Angie kept parchment paper in the apartment, and they had no explanation for the handwriting. Fear began to take hold. Their friend Lou, who often visited the apartment, was the first to voice what both women had begun to suspect. He hated the doll. He insisted it carried something unnatural, something malicious. He told Donna to get rid of it. But she refused, partly out of sentiment, partly because she didn't believe such a thing was possible. But Lou's warnings would soon prove right. One night, Donna returned home to find Annabelle sitting on her bed, but this time the doll was different. It was not simply sitting, it was positioned deliberately. Its arms lay folded, its legs crossed neatly as though it were waiting. On the back of its tiny hand, smeared in what looked like blood, were drops of red. Donna recoiled. There was no cut, no injury. The substance was real. The doll was bleeding. That night, the apartment filled with dread. And it would only get worse. Lou began to suffer violent dreams. He described waking in the middle of the night, paralyzed, with Annabelle crawling up his body toward his chest. He swore he felt its soft hands press against his throat as the room darkened around him. Another time, Lou awoke in Donna's apartment to hear rustling in the next room. Certain it was an intruder, he entered the dark space and froze. Annabelle sat in the corner. As he approached, he felt something slash across his chest. He collapsed, clutching his skin, and found deep claw marks raked across him, bleeding, burning, as though a wild animal had attacked him. The doll had crossed from moving objects and notes into physical violence. Donna and Angie were terrified. Whatever was inside their home was no longer seeking attention. It was seeking harm. Desperate, they sought help. They contacted a psychic medium who agreed to hold a seance in their apartment. The medium spoke of a girl named Annabelle Higgins. According to the spirit, she had died tragically on the land before the apartments were built. She was lonely, seeking comfort. She wanted to be loved. She wanted to stay with Donna and Angie. Moved by the tragic story, the nurses allowed the presence to remain. They even gave the doll permission to be a vessel for Annabelle's spirit. But this was a mistake, a fatal mistake, because what they invited into their home was not the spirit of a child. It was something far darker, something that would soon reveal its true nature. And when it did, it would force Donna and Angie to call on the only people who could face it, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The apartment on Park Avenue had grown unbearable. Donna and Angie were no longer the bright young women they had been when the doll first arrived. They lived in constant fear, jumping at every sound, every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of shadow. Even in the daylight, Annabelle dominated their thoughts. The doll sat quietly, motionless, but the air around it was suffocating, thick with dread. They moved it, they hid it, they even locked it in another room, but Annabelle always found a way back. Lou, their friend, was the most outspoken. He despised the doll and warned them again and again, "It's not a little girl. It wants something from you. It wants inside you." But Donna resisted. After all, hadn't the seance revealed that Annabelle was just a lonely child spirit, searching for love? Couldn't something so tragic deserve compassion? But compassion in the world of the paranormal can be a trap. The disturbances grew bolder. At night, scratching noises echoed through the walls, though no mice or vermin were ever found. Doors slammed on their own. Cold spots froze the air in rooms that should have been warm. And always Annabelle seemed to be watching. One night, Donna found the doll on her bed again, but this time it was different. Annabelle's arms were folded across her lap, her legs crossed neatly, as though someone had carefully positioned her there. On her tiny cloth hands, smears of crimson appeared. Drops of blood. Donna screamed and Angie rushed in. But by the time they turned on the light, the stains seemed to fade, sinking into the fabric like water into cloth. The doll had moved from tricks to threats. Lou suffered most. His dreams became suffocating nightmares. He described waking paralyzed, unable to move as Annabelle crawled slowly up his body. He could feel the weight of her fabric frame pressing down on his chest, hear the faint rustle of her cloth as she shifted closer. Her hands, small, soft, stitched, wrapped around his throat. Lou gasped, unable to scream, unable to breathe. Just before he passed out, he jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the doll lying lifeless across the room. Another time, Lou entered the apartment while Donna and Angie were out. He heard shuffling in Donna's room and thought an intruder had broken in. He burst inside, only to find Annabelle sitting silently in the corner. He felt a rush of heat, then agony. 3 deep gashes ripped across his chest and stomach, burning as if a hot iron had been pressed into his skin. The wounds healed in days, but the fear never did. Finally, desperate, Donna and Angie turned to outside help. They contacted a priest, who in turn recommended a pair of investigators who had built their reputation across the East Coast. A husband and wife team. Names that would become legendary. Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens arrived at the apartment on a crisp autumn evening. Donna and Angie recounted everything. The moving doll, the blood, the notes, Lou's attacks, the seance with the supposed child named Annabelle Higgins. Lorraine listened carefully, her clairvoyant senses already prickling with unease. The air inside the apartment was charged, like static before a storm. When Donna explained that they had invited the spirit of the little girl to inhabit the doll, Lorraine's expression hardened. Ed leaned forward and spoke firmly. Spirits do not inhabit dolls. They do not cling to objects in that way. What you've welcomed here is not a child. It's an inhuman spirit. A demon. It has tricked you, and now it has permission to stay. Donna and Angie froze. The tragedy of Annabelle Higgins had felt so real. But according to the Warrens, this was nothing more than a mask. A lure. Ed explained that demonic entities use deception to gain sympathy. They pretend to be harmless, innocent, vulnerable. And once invited, they tighten their hold. Their ultimate goal is possession, not of the doll, but of the living. In this case, Donna was the target. The Warrens requested a full investigation of the apartment. Lorraine moved from room to room, her rosary clasped tightly in her hands, murmuring prayers under her breath. She described the presence as dark, old, and hateful. Ed set to work interviewing Lou, documenting his physical wounds and his terrifying experiences. He confirmed what he had suspected from the beginning. This was not simply a haunting. It was an infestation. A stage of demonic activity that, if not stopped, would escalate to full possession. The Warrens immediately contacted the Catholic Church. A priest was dispatched to perform a blessing. He sprinkled holy water through the apartment, commanding the spirit to depart. The walls seemed to vibrate. The atmosphere thickened. But Annabelle only grew stronger. That night, Lou endured his worst attack yet. He awoke in Donna's apartment, unable to move, with Annabelle sitting silently at the foot of the bed. The doll's head tilted slowly. Its stitched smile seemed wider, sharper. He tried to shout, but no sound came. Annabelle began to move, impossibly, her body shifting, crawling, dragging its cloth frame up his body. Lou felt invisible hands close around his throat. His lungs screamed for air as darkness closed in. And then, silence. The pressure vanished. Annabelle lay still on the floor. Lou scrambled from the bed, gasping, his neck bruised with the marks of unseen hands. The entity had revealed its true power. The Warrens concluded the doll could not remain. With Donna's consent, they took Annabelle with them, determined to remove the cursed object from the apartment. Lorraine held it in her lap as they drove through winding Connecticut roads, reciting prayers. But the demon fought back. Halfway home, the car shuddered violently. The steering locked. The brakes failed. The engine cut out. Ed swerved, barely avoiding oncoming traffic. They tried again, the car roared, then died. Only when Ed sprinkled holy water over the doll and commanded the spirit to release its grip did the car restart. Each mile home was a battle. Every turn of the wheel threatened to be their last. When they finally reached their home in Monroe, both Ed and Lorraine knew this was no ordinary case. This was an object tainted by something profoundly malevolent. Annabelle was no child's toy. She was bait, a vessel, a weapon. And though she was now locked away in the Warrens' care, the story was far from over. Because Annabelle had no intention of staying silent. And soon she would prove that no glass case could contain her evil. The Warrens carried Annabelle into their home with the weight of dread heavy in their bones. Lorraine, sensitive as always, described the doll as radiating something inhuman. The atmosphere in their home changed the moment it entered. At first, they kept her in Ed's study, sitting quietly on a chair. But the disturbances began almost immediately. Annabelle shifted positions, turning her head slightly, crossing her legs, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Movements subtle enough to unnerve, undeniable enough to terrify. At night, footsteps echoed across the hallways of the Warren home. Shadows flickered against the walls. Growls were heard, low and guttural, vibrating through the floorboards. And then came the first major incident. One of the priests the Warrens trusted, Father Jason Bradford, visited the home to examine the doll. He looked at Annabelle sitting on the chair and laughed. "You're just a doll. You can't hurt anyone." Ed warned him not to mock the entity. Lorraine begged him to be cautious. But the priest dismissed their warnings, reached out, and tapped the doll on the head. "You're nothing but a toy." On his drive home that day, Father Bradford's car lost control. The brakes failed. The steering locked. His vehicle spun wildly and nearly collided with a truck. He survived, but he was shaken, admitting later that he had felt something dark seize him in that moment. Annabelle had shown her disdain for mockery. As weeks passed, more visitors came to the Warrens' home. Some asked to see the doll. Others dared to touch it. The Warrens always warned them not to. One story became infamous. A young couple, skeptical of the doll's reputation, visited the Warrens Occult Museum. The man, mocking and arrogant, banged on the glass case where Annabelle sat and dared her to prove she was real. Ed, furious, threw them out immediately. On the motorcycle ride home, the man lost control of his bike and slammed into a tree. He died instantly. His girlfriend survived but claimed they had been laughing about Annabelle moments before the crash. The Warrens never forgot the tragedy. And Annabelle's reputation grew darker. By now, the Warrens knew Annabelle could never be allowed to roam freely. They constructed a special glass case, blessed by priests, and locked the doll inside. A sign was placed across the door. Warning, positively do not open. Inside the case, Annabelle sat silently. But Lorraine always said her clairvoyant senses still burned whenever she approached. The entity was contained, but not destroyed. Even in her prison, Annabelle's legend grew. Visitors reported seeing her eyes shift, her head tilt, her cloth hands twitch. Some claimed she growled. Others felt sudden waves of nausea or dread when standing near her. The Warrens insisted she remained one of the most dangerous objects in their museum, not because of what she was, but because of what worked through her. Ed described her this way: "It's not the doll that's dangerous. It's the inhuman spirit attached to it. The doll is just a vessel, a focal point. If you give it attention, if you challenge it, you give it power." After decades of being locked away, Annabelle remains under glass. But the stories surrounding her continue. Paranormal investigators who visit the museum report strange equipment malfunctions. Psychics refuse to stay in the same room. Even priests approach her with caution. And though Hollywood transformed her into a terrifying porcelain figure for the Conjuring universe, the truth is more chilling. Because Annabelle is real. A simple, harmless-looking Raggedy Ann doll. Smiling with stitched lips, red yarn hair framing her face, sitting quietly in her glass prison. But behind that stitched smile is a history of blood, deception, and death. To this day, the Warrens Museum displays her under lock and key. But the warning remains the same. Do not touch her. Do not mock her. Do not underestimate her. Because Annabelle is not just a doll. She is a doorway. And doorways can always be opened.